So let's start with second half of day 10 and let's start with lab 21. Now in our previous lab what we did is we created this simple screen here and we were able to get the look and feel. But this screen is dead, right? In other words, it does not have any behind code, it does not connect to SQL server, it doesn't do anything, it's just a simple screen. So in this lab what we'll do is we'll bring life in the screen. In other words, we'll write the insert, update, delete operation on the screen as we have done for our Windows form. So as a developer, you must be thinking on those lines, saying that okay, that means we have to write the ADO.NET code, we have to go and write the code for binding to the grid, we have to write all the SQL statements and etc. But we don't have to. If you remember right, we had created this nice data access library over here, and if you remember, we said previously that this data access library we are going to reuse it. So in other words, rather than going and recoding the whole thing from scratch, what we'll do is we'll use the data access library, we'll reuse the data access library and try to improve reusability. So in other words, this complete thing what we have here, right, the get customers function, the insert customer function, the update customer function, these functions which already have been written while we created the Windows form, we are going to go and leverage this function rather than writing them from scratch. So after this demo, you will also get a feel that okay, so that is what is the whole importance of creating a tired architecture. Because we created the data access library separately, now we can take the data access library and reuse it with web applications. We can take the same data access library, we can reuse with WinForms. So the whole point about tired architecture is that one is reusability, and second is because we have divided them into compartments, now when we change one section of the code, we don't have to really make big changes to the other section of the code. Okay, so let's go ahead, and first what we'll do is we'll go and reference this data access library in our customer data entry web. So let me right click on this, add reference. So let me go and reference the data access library in my customer data entry web. Okay, and what we'll first do is let's go and fill this data grid first. So let's go back to the behind code of ASP.NET page. Now remember that as we said previously, that ASP.NET has two parts to it. One is the look and feel, which is the .aspx page, and one is the behind code, where you actually go and write your logic. So what I'll do is let me go and create a very simple function here saying private void load customers. So this function will actually go and load the customers into the grid. And in order to use this data access library, we also have to first go and import the namespace, right? So I'll say okay, now go ahead and import the data access library into the behind code here. And in the load customers, what we have to do is we have to go and create the object of the data access library. So if you remember right, the data access library class was CLS SQL server. So we'll just say CLS SQL server obj is equal to new CLS SQL server, and our data grid name, let's see what we have kept our data grid name as, grid customers. So we'll say here grid customers dot data source is equal to obj dot get customers. Now if you remember right, this get customers function is nothing but this function which actually goes and returns back all the customers which exist in our customer table, right? And this load customers, what I'll do is I'll go and fire in the page load event of my page. So I'll just say here load customers. Right, now people who are new to ASP.NET, in case you don't know what exactly is this page underscore load event, the page underscore load event is an event which fires every time you call the page or every time you load a ASP.NET page. Now what I would suggest is in case you are completely fresher to ASP.NET, please go and see the videos of page lifecycle which we are provided in the ASP.NET fundamentals section. So in case you are new to this page lifecycle, what my suggestion would be, just go and see those 3 or 4 videos which we have in our ASP.NET fundamentals, and then again restart the video from here. Okay, so in case you're new to ASP.NET and you do not understand this page load event thing over here, please go back, refer the videos, and then again come back here, right? So Now what will happen now is, if I go and run this application, the page load event will fire. The page load event will go and call the load customers. The load customers will go and call our data access library, that is CLS SQL server, who will in turn go and fire this select star from customer. It will return back a data set, and this data set will then get tied up with the grid customers, and we should see the display of customers in our ASP.NET page. So let's go ahead and see if this works or not. So we'll also ensure that this customer data entry web is a startup project, and let's ensure that this is a startup page, and let's do a control F5. So as usual, the code crashes and the code has to crash. Let's just figure out what happened. So you can see that what he's saying is, I'm not able to find this connection string called as dbcon. So let's go and figure out what happened. Okay, now if you remember right, we had created a configuration parameter called as dbcon. So if you remember right, in our Windows Form application, in the app config, we had created this configuration called as dbcon. Why? Because we did not want to hard code our connection string in our behind code or in our application, right? So tomorrow if you want to go and just change the SQL Server database name, or must be we just want to go and change the SQL Server path, we can just make the change over here and it gets reflected across the project. Now such kind of configuration is not present in our web application. So if you see our web application for now, we don't have any kind of configuration parameters in our config file in the web application. Now I also want to clarify one point here. When you are creating a Windows form, right, your configurations are stored into something called as the app.config file. And when you are creating configurations for your web application, you have to store the configurations into something called as the web.config file. So now what we have to do is, in order this application to run, right, we have to ensure that this connection string is also present in our web config file. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do a control C here. I'll go back to my web config file and I will go and paste those those configuration parameters over here. So you can see that my connection string is not now available here, and also the name is dbcon. So now let's see that if our code runs properly, the configuration is already now been introduced in the configuration file. So let's again do a control F5 to see that if this code works now. So as usual, we are not seeing the records in the grid here. You can see the page is running, but there is no record displayed into the grid. Okay, so let's see what happened here. Now basically we have missed one more line of code here. You can see that we have tied up with the data source, but we have to call one more command here saying that okay, you have now given the data into the data source, but also ensure that you go and you bind the data. So now let's again go back, let's build the solution, and let's again do a control F5. And I hope that this time we should see the data grid with records, and there it is. Now you can see that our page is running, and we can also see the records which are there in our customer table inside the grid. So now that we have displayed the output on the data grid, now the next thing is we have to go and deliver these three functionalities, that is add, update and delete. But before we try to consume too many things, let's try to get the importance of this lab 21. So what we'll do is, we'll first end lab 21 here. Okay, we are not going to do a lot of things in lab 21, but I want you guys to take one big message from lab 21, and that is reusability. Now when we created our Windows form, right, what we did is we did one big smart move, and that is we created a two-tier architecture, or a two-tier approach. We took a two-tier approach, and because our code, or because our data access code was pushed to this separate class library here called as CLS SQL Server, or the data access library, we were able to reuse this class both in web as well as Windows. If we had not done it at that time, right, we won't be able to reuse this code here, and we would be rewriting the whole code from scratch. We would be rewriting the ADO.NET code, we would be creating a data set, and etc, etc. But because we did that smart move of breaking the logic into two parts, one is a user interface and the other one's a data access layer, in this lab, today we are enjoying the benefit of reusability. So always remember that a tiered approach is always a better approach for any software application. So whenever you create a software application, first thing that okay, So how can I logically divide this application into smaller pieces, so that I can manage them better? So the biggest takeover which I want you to take from this lab 21 is that because of the two-tier approach, we have increased usability both in web as well as Windows, and we did not rewrite the code of data access. So I hope that you have enjoyed day 10. Now in day 11, what we will do is, we'll try to implement add, update and delete functionality, using the data access library. Again, we are going to use the data access library. We will not rewrite the code of ADO.NET. Okay. So again, we are going to follow the good practice of reusability, rather than rewriting. Okay. Now, as I will be moving ahead in day 11, day 12, day 13, right? I will not just show you how to code, but I will show you how to code in a better way. Remember that a difference between a programmer and a good programmer is that the first one actually completes the project, but the second one completes the project with elegancy. He ensures that best practices are followed. He ensures that reusability is followed. He ensures that proper coding guidelines is followed. So we'll try to become the second kind of programmer, rather than a programmer who can just finish a code. So again, we understand the pain of freshers. We understand that how difficult it is, when you actually start your programming career. You get stuck up in so many places. It is so easy to explain from here, saying that okay, two-tier approach, reusability, but I understand that as a fresher it is so difficult to grasp these concepts. So in case you are stuck anywhere, in case you want some help, in case your program is not compiling, in case you are not understanding some concept, my suggestion would be go and add us on Skype, talk with us, share your screens, show us what you have done, show in which lab you are stuck. So you can see that over here we have two support IDs we have opened for our Questpond members. One is Questpond support and the other one is Questpond support 1. So leverage our support, read our videos, try to write source code, try to follow these labs and try to see that how you can become a good programmer. I'm sure that if you follow this lab, one day by one day, a day will come, when you really become a programmer. So I hope that you are enjoying this video, and in day 11, we will implement insert, update and delete functionality on our ASP.NET page. Thank you so much.